for the Big 12 matchups and then some, a show that we debuted last week. If you don't know what it is, basically I talk about the Big 12 and college football in general, and at the end of the show I have my 10 picks against the spread. We pick key Big 12 games and we pick national games as well. Let's go ahead and start off with some cheers, okay? Cheers, first of all, goes out to Boise State and Virginia Tech for putting on one heck of a ball game on Labor Day night. What a great way from an exciting standpoint to end the first week of college football. Game went back and forth. Looked like in the beginning Boise State was going to have their way, leading 17-0. Virginia Tech, in the end, it looked like they were going to prevail, but they mismanaged the clock a little bit, and then on Boise State's game-winning drive, committed a late hit penalty, which aided the Bronco drive, and eventually Kellen Moore, quarterback of Boise, would lead his team downfield, score a touchdown with just over a minute to go, and Boise, in what might as well have been a home game for Virginia Tech because it was over 90% Hokie fans at the Washington Redskins home stadium, Boise State proved that they can not only beat a top 10 team out of conference, a BCS team out of conference, but that they can do so away from the blue Smurf field. I had picked Ohio State and these guys, as you might remember a month ago on my college football preview, to meet for the national championship. Well, Ohio State could still get there, but unfortunately for myself, this team cannot. They're out of the mix. Virginia Tech has a good football team, but Boise State was a little bit better on Monday night. And Boise, for the rest of the year, they're going to be double-digit favorites in every game that they play in. If you don't want Boise State to play for the national championship, first of all, you better hope that Ohio State and Alabama run the table, or you better hope that Oregon State, the last week of September, can go to the Blue Smurf field and defeat Boise. It's going to be a pretty tough battle for the Beavers to do that, though, because nobody in the Western Athletic Conference is going to beat Boise State. There's just no way that's going to happen. If Boise, by the way, runs the table, it'll mark the 4th time in 5 years that they have gone undefeated in the regular season. Chris Peterson, I know you're probably making a lot of money being head coach at Boise, but I don't think you're making near enough considering the job you've done. Peterson, by the way, has only lost 4 games as head coach at Boise, and he's been there a while. Spectacular. Fantastic game. Cheers to both teams for one heck of a game on Labor Day night. Now, for some other cheers. Cheers goes out to the maize and blue of Michigan. That's right, the Michigan Wolverines and their quarterback, Denard Robinson, who rushed for nearly 200 yards. He also passed for about 200 in Michigan's victory over Connecticut. And Rich Rodriguez, you can tell that he has a lot of his players out there. Remember when he got there, it was players from the previous regime, but now he's got some of his own players. Remember, Rodriguez runs a different offensive system. I hope Michigan gives Rodriguez as much time as he needs, because I do think that Michigan in time is going to be a highly ranked team. I don't know how long it'll take them, but you have to be patient with Rodriguez. I do think Michigan will go to a bowl game this year, and hopefully, if it's only a 7-5 record for Michigan or 8-4, hopefully that's enough for Rodriguez to stay, to stay as long as he needs to get Michigan to be a contender like Ohio State and Iowa in the Big Ten. But great job by Robinson, the quarterback. Of course, Michigan has that big game coming up at Notre Dame, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Also, we have to give it up to Big 12 running backs, okay, like DeMarco Murray, like Kendall Hunter, and like Daniel Thomas of Kansas State. Those 3 guys all rushed for over 200 yards this week. OSU's Kendall Hunter, by the way, looks like he's all the way back after missing much of last season because of the ankle injury. He looked like he was in midseason form already in OSU's easy win over Washington State. So great job to Kendall Hunter. Daniel Thomas of Kansas State. He was the leading rusher last year in the Big 12. Looked like he's in for another big year in K-State's win over UCLA. And even though Oklahoma struggled against Utah State, DeMarco Murray didn't. He had a couple of big runs in the game, including a 63-yard touchdown run against the Aggies of Utah State in Oklahoma's win. DeMarco Murray over 200 yards rushing. So Big 12 running backs were solid this past weekend. Speaking of Big 12 running backs, Texas has announced that Trey Newton is going to be their starting running back. There is talk as to whether or not it be him or Cody Johnson. By the way, Newton Yardage-wise, didn't do all that much, but did score 3 touchdowns in Texas's win over Rice. I'm going to have more, by the way, on that game in just a second. Now, those are the cheers. The jeers, and I have several of them. First of all, a jeer going out to the Kansas Jayhawks for only scoring 3 points against North Dakota State. Are you kidding me? North Dakota State. I didn't even know they had a football team. Well, Kansas knows that now after losing 6-3, despite the fact that North Dakota State only had 180 yards of total offense, and yet they still won the ball game. Turner Gill could not have asked for a worse debut, and Kansas fans could not hope that basketball season gets here quite soon enough. Another jeer goes out to the Rice University fans, and one Texas subscriber messaged me, and he had heard that quite a few Rice fans had actually sold their tickets to Texas fans before the game. When I watched that game on ESPN, and this game was, by the way, in Houston at Reliant Stadium, I at first thought, I didn't know Austin, Texas built a second football stadium because that entire stadium was filled with Longhorn fans. Are you kidding me? It was supposed to be a road game for Texas, and it's predominantly burnt orange all around the stadium. So, and by the way, it was only a 2-touchdown deficit for Rice at halftime. How do you think Rice players feel knowing that your team, your fan base has no confidence in you whatsoever? This is in your home city, and you had to basically trying to find Rice fans at that game was like trying to find needles in a haystack. It was pretty difficult. It was only a 2-touchdown game at halftime. Imagine what it could have been like. I'm not saying Rice would have won the game. They wouldn't have. But imagine what it might have been like if Rice actually had some fan support in this game. They didn't. And for Texas, congratulations on getting that additional home game, because there was hardly any blue to be found in the stands on Saturday in Houston. And we have to give a big jeer to Ole Miss. The Rebels, a major favorite at home, the Cotton Bowl champions from a year ago, losing to Jacksonville State. I know you don't have Jevin Sneed anymore or Dexter McCluster. No excuse to lose to Jacksonville State. So a big jeer to Houston Nutt and the Ole Miss Rebels. Now it's time for my picks. What I do every week, I pick against the spread. And first of all, before we pick this week's games, let's take a look at how I did last week. And as you can tell, it went pretty well. 6-3-1, documented 6-3-1 last week. The only 3 losses I had were the Boise State Virginia Tech game, as well as the UCLA Kansas State game, and I also lost the Cincinnati Fresno game. Notre Dame was favored by 11, won by 11, so that's a push. That's what the tie's for, and the other 6 games were victories. And then the 16th President of the United States, well, he went 5-4-1. Not that I endorse that any of you go out to Vegas and wager on my games. I only do this for entertainment purposes, but if by any chance you did do that, you won a little bit of money from Abe Lincoln, and for me, you won even more money. But again, this is just for entertainment, so don't confuse me with Wayne Allen Root or any of those handicappers. I only do this for fun. Let's begin the picks now, and we're going to start with a couple of Big 12 games. We're only picking 2 Big 12 games this week. The Oklahoma-Florida State game, by the way, if you want to know who I picked, check it out on the weekly matchup show for the week. Colorado at California. The Golden Bears giving 8 to the Buffs. Colorado winning in Denver at a neutral site over Colorado State just a few days ago, playing a future conference opponent in Cal. Remember, Colorado's going to the Pac-10 pretty soon. It's going to be a true road game, and last year Colorado was dreadful on the road. Until they can prove they can win a true road game, I will take Cal minus the 8. Abraham Lincoln, by the way, likes Colorado. Already a disagreement. What's new? And then Iowa hosting Iowa State. Bragging rights, of course, on the line. Iowa victorious last week. Iowa State, they won as well, defeating Northern Illinois. But Iowa is a lot better than Northern Illinois. And Iowa State's going to play the first of what I think are going to be 7 very difficult games. Iowa, I like them to win, minus the 13.5. And the coin likes Iowa as well. Good job, Abe. All right, Michigan, Notre Dame. This should be a good game. It's being played at South Bend. Michigan comes in as a 4-point underdog. I would not be surprised if Michigan won this game straight up. I will take Michigan to at least cover, taking the 4 points. And the coin, by the way, likes Michigan as well. Florida and South Florida, just a few years ago, South Florida made it all the way to number 2 in the rankings, but they've been a declining program. Florida wants to prove that last week was just a bad game against Miami of Ohio. They won it, but didn't look great doing it. I like Florida giving the 16.5. The coin, by the way, likes South Florida taking the 16.5. Georgia is an underdog this week at South Carolina, 2.5-point dog. That surprises me a little bit. South Carolina did look real good against Southern Miss last week. Georgia looked good in their season opener as well. Mark Richt, the head coach of the Bulldogs, made some changes during the offseason with coaching staff. I think that's going to pay off in this game. Georgia on the road, I think, gets the job done, even though I know in the past they've struggled against the Gamecocks. I think Georgia will prove something, and I think that they will at least cover getting the 2.5. I think Georgia, as a matter of fact, will probably win straight up, but will take the points, 2.5. Georgia, and the coin, by the way, likes South Carolina. Oregon and Tennessee, I think Oregon is still scoring points on the New Mexico Lobos. Scored over 70 in that game, including over 50 points before halftime. Tennessee playing at home, Rocky Top fans, that will help them for a while, but Oregon eventually will wear Tennessee out. Oregon's just simply a better team. Oregon, I like the Ducks to win the game and to cover the spread. That's 13 points that they're giving. Abe Lincoln likes Oregon too. BYU, just a 1-point favorite at Colorado Springs against Air Force, a team that Oklahoma, by the way, will be seeing a week from Saturday. BYU, the victory over Washington, looked good. Air Force, there are still a lot of unknowns about them. They lost a lot of interior players on both sides of the ball. I think BYU will exploit that, and I think BYU will win, giving the one. This is just about a pick-em game. I like BYU to win. The coin, by the way, likes Air Force. Stanford, 6-point favorite. Stanford, by the way, just recently ranked in the top 25. They're 25 in one major poll. Andrew Luck at quarterback. They're giving 6 at UCLA. The Bruins, was not impressed with them over in their loss over Kansas State. And besides, UCLA is banged up. I think Stanford goes into the Rose Bowl and beats UCLA, giving the 6 points. And the coin likes Stanford as well. Alabama, giving 12 points to Penn State. This is where ESPN College Game Day will be at this week in Tuscaloosa. Alabama, I know that the situation with Mark Ingram might be a little bit concerning, but Alabama has plenty of offensive depth with Trent Richardson and Penn State, true freshman quarterback. This is going to be a learning experience for him. I think Alabama to easily cover the 12 in this game, and the coin likes Alabama too. And finally, what I think is the game of the week. I'm surprised College Game Day is not there for this one. The Horseshoe, Columbus, Ohio for Miami at Ohio State. These teams have had 9 days to get ready for each other. By the way, first time these two teams have played since the 2002 National Championship game. I think Ohio State's Terrell Pryor, the quarterback, has a chance to maybe steal a little spotlight from Boise State's Kellen Moore and become the Heisman frontrunner with a solid performance against a good Miami defense. Miami, a fine team on the road. I don't know how they're going to fare against Ohio State. A lot of uncertainty there. I'll take Ohio State, giving the points minus the 9. And the coin, by the way, likes Miami. So, some disagreements between Abe and me. We'll see how we did when we come back for next week's show on the Big 12 matchups and then some. Take it easy.